Hey guys, Argent Templar here. So yes, I'm doing Teen Titans. Hopefully I can get through all five of them. It shouldn't be that hard. There's only five Teen Titans. I don't think I posted my review of Teen Titans yet, but I will do that and post it. It's one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and probably my favorite animated TV show. I'm a huge fan of Teen Titans. It's great stuff. If I ever do my top five waifu list, which I've been promising for a while, but I get sidetracked. I put a lot of shit up. Raven would definitely be on my top five waifu list. Although I know she's kind of underage. Maybe now. It depends on the edition of Raven. Um, like even TV show Raven looks like she's fully grown. Like she has a woman's body, etc. So I don't really think it's that creepy. But I digress, and I'm just irritating you. So Raven is was always my favorite character. I found I could relate a lot to her, and I think she is one of the more complicated, probably the most complicated character on the show, and just one of the more complicated characters in comics. And I just find her really interesting. I think her character is really well described by Robin in the end part three, um, where he calls her the most hopeful person he's ever met. And I think ultimately, despite all her pessimism, all her cynicism, all her sarcasm, hope is really the word to be used to describe Raven. Despite being a creature of darkness, she really is the Avatar of hope, or the Avatar of hope. That's kind of her purpose in the show. Because she always keeps trying, despite immense troubles. So, for those of you who don't know what Raven is, her mother was a drug addict, alcoholic who joined a satanic cult and was raped by Satan, aka Trigon. So Raven was given birth um, by her mother on an interdimensional plane, and she was raised by intergalactic space monks to suppress all emotion. Because if she displays any emotion, her demonic heritage will activate her powers. And Raven's powers are strong enough to destroy the world. She's capable of fighting her father on even terms, and her father controls an entire dimension by himself. He's basically Satan, um, like the DC universe's equivalent of Satan. Despite all this, despite her horrible social skills, frankly, um, her cold nature, etc., she still remains hopeful. She still cares about her friends and tries to be close to them in her own way. It's extremely difficult though because for her, if she gets close to them and she starts to care about them, that could trigger her powers and potentially destroy the world. And yet, despite this, she's willing to take the risk and try to walk the extremely tight rope between having people who love and care about her and triggering an apocalypse. She's willing to hope that she can control herself and that she can become better with her powers, etc. And that really describes Raven. She was born for the sole purpose of destroying the Earth, but instead she decided to use the powers given to her to try and protect it. And I think that's just something I can relate to because I was born with superpowers and a demon inside it. No, I'm just kidding. But no, Raven I think really like for kids who are troubled, who kind of feel out of place. Maybe they're smarter than other people, maybe they're more sensitive than other people, maybe they're more um just emotional than other people. Life can be very hard. It can be very tricky. You can get hurt extremely easily. Raven's kind of thing is kind of, to me at least, almost a metaphor for mental illness. Raven has to be extremely careful and walk around eggshells her whole life, or else she'll trigger some kind of catastrophic meltdown. And it's like that for a lot of us who are mentally ill. Um, Extreme bouts of anger could trigger manic episodes for me, and I just fucking lose it if that would happen. And I can really relate to Raven in that. And the inability to control your emotions does lead to you becoming cold, calculating, cynical, and sarcastic. Um, you learn to distrust all your emotions and just rely on cold reason and just utter dispassion. And that's really what Raven does. As you can see in like the episode Nevermore when they go into the her brain and you see that she has all her emotions separated from her. I believe her cloak is blue because the dominant emotion, what was left after she removed all her emotions, was serenity, because she has to remain calm and emotionless, or else she'll trigger her powers. All the other feelings that a normal person would have to be repressed, and she relies only on logic, reason, etc. But despite all this, she does try to have friends. Despite being very uncomfortable around people, she does try to do that. She does try to do good for the world. And I think that makes her a very likable character because she suffers immense issues. She suffers probably more than any other character on the team. I mean, Cyborg lost half of his body in an accident or whatever the story is. But that's physical pain, and I'm sure that was immensely bad, but he seems to have fully come to terms with that. Raven obviously hasn't come to terms with it or can't come to terms with it. Her entire life is continually on hold for fear of tipping over the apple cart and blowing the world up. Perhaps that's why she's so cold to Beast Boy, despite an obvious mutual attraction. Um, Although I kind of like her and Robin, to be honest, but that's another story. Because she can't do anything. She can't start her life, really. She's kind of stuck in permanent limbo until the whole Trigon issue is resolved. And when it is resolved, she's not really sure what to do with herself. She can finally go and do whatever she wants, but instead she chooses to continue to serve others. Um, Besides that, I can also understand just the way she kind of behaves. Developing, if you have severe problems with emotions, and emotional instability, you tend to become naturally introverted and have trouble dealing with other people as kind of a side effect because it's hard to relate to other people when your emotions aren't normal. And it's also hard to interact with people when you don't display a normal emotional range. It just comes across as being very strange. And kind of a result of that, and combined with the over reliance on reason, leads you to just do things like read compulsively and aggregate information. Because if you can't have a normal emotional range, you can read enough information that you can formulate one, and you can figure out how you're supposed to react, which I know is something that often happens with me, where I'll base how I react to something off of something I read or saw in a movie, because I just, between bipolar and the medications I'm on, I'm not always sure what exactly the socially acceptable way to react to something is. It just doesn't come naturally to some people. I actually don't have autism. They've done the tests. I have bipolar, but between that and social anxiety disorder, and just depression in general, it's difficult. So there's that. Also, Raven's just a waifu in general because she's kind of a nerdy girl, and she's very pretty, obviously. So she's kind of pretty. She's kind of a goth. Well, she's very pretty. She's kind of a goth. She's kind of nerdy. She's kind of introverted, alone. She kind of appeals to that kind of that moe instinct a bit, although in kind of a more sexual way. Like, she's kind of the girl who you feel just needs to be loved. Someone just needs to protect her and take care of her, and basically be the man in her life. And that's all she would really need, is just someone to love her and protect her. For emotionally speaking, for her to just perk up and just become an absolutely radiant woman. And that's something a lot of the most popular female characters are like. Rei Ayanami's kind of like that. Asuka's kind of like that. Um, who's the other one? Hermione Granger's kind of like that. Most of the really popular female characters are like that because it triggers. It's kind of naturally what men are most attracted to. Men want a feminine, beautiful woman who is going to be dependent on them, at least to some extent emotionally, and will give them unconditional love. And Raven comes across as the kind of girl who is just so distraught and kind of ungrounded that if she ever did get into a relationship with a guy, she would most certainly never cheat on him or never leave him, or do whatever it took to keep the relationship going. So that's my thoughts on Raven, one of my all-time favorite characters, a character I relate to very much personally. This is Argent Templar signing out.